Hello, lovers of Black true crime. Let me welcome you to the Noir Nation. If I asked you to name me three Black serial killers, could you do it? What about a Black person that's pulled off a heist of epic proportions? Don't worry, I couldn't either. But being a lover of true crime and all things Black, I decided to combine these two passions into a true crime podcast exploring some of the most intriguing and lesser known criminal masterminds with a melanated leading cast. Each week, I will bring you the stories of some of the most prolific criminals you've never heard of. I'm your host, Renee Davis, and this is the Melanin Mayhem podcast. Well, hello, honey. Greetings and salutations to you lovers of Black true crime. Welcome to the Noir Nation if it's your first time. Welcome back to those who have already pledged their love for the country girl with that southern drawl and her tales of mayhem. As always, I am back with your weekly dose of and boy, this is one of those kind of stories that will definitely have you thinking, what in the entire fuck, Renee? Imagine a group of men in a club where you gain status or street cred by killing or savagely mutilating people. Four men linked together by one common goal killing white people were said to be part of a reign of terror that had Northern California, and specifically for this group of men, the city of San Francisco fucked all the way up with a spree of execution style shootings nicknamed the Zebra Kills. This week's Melanin Mayhem makers have enough members to be a goddamn boy band. Allow me to introduce you to Larry Green, J.C. Simon, Manuel Moore, and Jesse Lee Cooks, aka the Death Angels, aka the Zebra Killers. Now, normally I would start off by giving you some background information on our mayhem makers. Not this week. You see, try as I might, I couldn't find anything, and I do mean anything, on any of these men until they were charged with these heinous crimes. It's like they didn't even exist prior to being arrested. And this was in the 70s, so while it wasn't the digital age, Black people's record keeping had come leaps and bounds from, say, some of the earlier crimes that we had committed. But there's always a hurdle or a mountain to get over when it comes to us and our history. Why should this be any different? But while I don't have the origin stories, the stories I do have should be quite enlightening. So let's get into it. At first, it seemed like it was just random happenstance. Regular people going about their regular day were getting unnecessarily killed. It happens a lot in our community, don't it? Yeah. The police don't ever start a task force to get to the bottom of it for us, right? So would you be surprised if I told you that in the late 1973, early 1974s, when this scenario started happening in San Francisco, the cops went all out to find the perpetrators committing these crimes against these regular people going about their regular lives? Oh, and I did mention that these people were white, right? So you're not surprised anymore, right? I know. So yeah, for 6 months starting in October 73 through April 1974, more than 20 white people were killed by an organized group of melanated mayhem makers, or so the police say. They described it as one of the most violent and prolonged cases of domestic terrorism in the history of the United States. It was not a single catastrophic event, though. This was an ongoing wave of random attacks. The group is thought to be responsible for at least 73 murders and attempted murders all over California for about 4 years. Our group featured today, they were named in 24 attacks, where 8 people were injured, 15 were killed. Young Black men were walking up on random white folks and blowing them the fuck away. Like, no small talk like they do in the movies, just walk up and fuck them up. Man, the Death Angels was a clique that advocated for the killing of white people. They were loosely associated with the Nation of Islam, but only in the fact that they were all Muslim and they went to some of the same mosques. But that's just happenstance. People click up at all kinds of organizations, religious or otherwise. The nation is not what caused these events to happen. A like mindedness is what caused these events to happen. A group of dudes, they shoot the shit a little bit, and they probably playing ball or working or something. And the next thing you know, one of them say something militant, somebody amen it, and the next thing you know, boom, a clique is born, and their name is the Death Angels. So who was doing the killing? The profile was that they were all black men that liked a 32 caliber handgun, and they were all again connected loosely with the Nation of Islam. That's it. That's all they had. And the reason they couldn't get much more information is because at the time, the police department was like 97% white. So you tell me which one of them white boys was going to be able to go down to the mosque and infiltrate the nation? Yeah. So racism was the gotcha in this situation. The theory was that these black men were committing these crimes because of racism against people of color. And racism was the reason the police couldn't do anything about it because they were too racist to hire black cops. So they really couldn't investigate in black spaces because, they stuck out like a black person at a Klan rally. So who the fuck did they kill, Nay? Well, I'll tell you. It all started October 20th, 1973, with the murder of Quita Haig. Now, I gotta admit, when I first started doing my research on this case, I was like, okay, they're killing white people. And then when I read the first victim, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Quita? That's a black ass name if I've ever heard one. And I don't think I have ever, in the history of white people, ever heard of one named Quita. Like, Quita is the name of the lady that made the potato salad and the macaroni and cheese at the cookout. Quita do hair dyeing up at Total Elegance. Quita got long nails and a gold tooth. I'm just saying. I'm doing this pod to educate you that black people do indeed do all types of crimes. Let me also educate you that there was once a white woman named Quita. Quita Haig and her husband Richard, they were going out for dinner on October 20th, 1973. They left their house and they started walking. 'Cause you see, the restaurant wasn't far from the house, and they had no idea that they would never make it to dinner. So as they're walking, a van drives by. They don't pay it any attention. They minding their own business, doing their own regular shit, going out to eat some regular dinner. Well, the van pulls over and three men get out. And they post up down the block, and when the Hags walk up, one of the men grabs Richard. Now, Richard don't want no smoke. Now, he tell his wife, look, they already got us. Just cooperate, and they won't hurt us. The trio tied their hands and made them lay down in the back of the van. They drove them to a deserted spot by some railroad tracks, and when they stopped, one of the men, a man named Larry Green, he said, "That white devil belongs to me." And he grabbed a 16-inch long machete from under the seat and he drug Quita out the van. He marched her over to the railroad tracks, laid her across them like she was on the cross. Then he looked down at her and raised that machete up to the heavens and brought it down with all his strength and chopped Quita's goddamn throat. He damn near decapitated that lady. And then he looked down and this motherfucker started dancing around and singing and shit, talking about, I did it! I did it! He was acting like he had just scored a touchdown and he was in the end zone doing his dance. And oh, no. He was not through with the white lady with the black name. He slashed her ass some more before passing the machete to the left to one of the other men. Then that motherfucker pulled out a goddamn Polaroid camera to memorialize his kill. Oh, Lord Jesus, that's a lot. Now I know at this point Richard Haig is sick. His wife just got unalived and it appears that he is next. All of a sudden the machete is raining down on Richard's face and head. Jesse Lee Cooks was fucking him up all the same, even if it wasn't like what Quita got. Richard said that it was like a man was chopping wood on his face. Yeah, you heard me. This is Richard's account. He must have had a praying grandmother because that man survived. He was beat to sleep, no doubt, but when he woke up the next day, they found him wandering around the area where Quita's body was. His hands were still bound in front of him. His face was slashed and beat to the guards, and not in a good way. He described the attackers as three black men in a white van. In the first episode, I think, I talked about the urban legends of my youth and how we were always warned to be on the lookout for the man in the white van. I told y'all we was led to believe that the man driving the van would be white. I also told y'all that was some bullshit, cause the motherfucker driving that white van in a black neighborhood was always gonna be black. That's the only way you can get a black person to walk up to the van and let their guard down, but I digress. Now, the next attack came 10 days later on October 30th, 1973, when 28-year-old Frances Rose caught a full chamber of lead emptied into her body while she sat in her car. Damn near blew her face clean off her head. Brutal, I tell you. Witnesses said that she was shot by a black man sitting in her passenger seat. That man would later be identified as Jesse Lee Cooks. Then on November 9th, 1973, 27-year-old Robert Wayne Stockman was out doing his job. He worked for the gas company, and he was out servicing his customers, and a well-dressed black man walked up to him and asked him for directions. And as Robert began to be helpful, as white people tend to be, the man shoved him behind a nearby fence and shot him in the neck. Now, I don't know what kind of superhuman chromosomes this man had, because that bullet to the neck should have meant that he was down for the count. Oh, no, 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 not this white man. He said, "Not today, Satan. Get thee behind me." He wrestled with that black man and some kind of way got that gun away from him. Oh shit, now it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. Shout out to my homeboy AJ, that's his favorite saying. Anyway, the rabbit got the gun now. He turns around and he shot his attacker 3 times. He got him in the arm, the shoulder, and the stomach. Now his ass is down for the count. But he ain't dead. He just got a few more holes than he started the day out with. Now, Robert gets somebody to call the cops, and they take a man named Leroy Doctor to the hospital to get patched up, and then he's off to jail for the next 9.5 years. But I want you to understand that this crime was attributed to the zebra killers. That's the only reason I brought it up, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Then on November 25th, 1973, 53-year-old Salim Irakat was found fucked up in his store. He had been shot in the head and his cash register was emptied. Now, the attackers had strayed from their normal MO at this point, because maybe you can tell by the name Salim Irakat. It ain't no white name, and neither was he. Everybody knows Salim is a Muslim name, and Salim probably can cook some good ass fish. I know in my hometown of Macon, Georgia, Salim's fish be bussin', baby. Shout out to Macon, shout out to Salim's. So yeah, they done killed a person of color. Now this goes against the mission statement to kill the white devils. Then come to find out that the motherfucker that killed Salim was a regular in his store. Every time he spoke to this nigga, he was a assalamu alaikum nigga. Like, sir, Allah is not pleased with this bullshit. I'm going to tell you some more about Salim's crime when we get to the trial. Now, on December 11th, 1973, 26-year-old Paul Danzig, he was standing on the corner shooting the shit with one of his friends, just about to use a payphone. Y'all remember payphones? Well, the next thing you know, 2 men walked up, pulled that gat from under their coat, and started blasting on their ass. The friend got away. Unfortunately, Paul did not. No rest for the wicked. Them niggas is back to back on they bullshit 2 days later, on December 13th, 1973, after attending a meeting to bring childcare to the neighborhood. 35-year-old Arthur Agnos, who was a mover and a shaker in local politics at the time, and who would also go on to later become the mayor of San Francisco. Arthur was standing outside the building talking to 2 women about the meeting that they had just left out of, when all of a sudden a black man walked up and was like, "Hold these bullets for me, please." And he shot Art 2 times, point blank in the chest. But again, Art was another one that had a praying grandmother. And he lived to tell the tale, because I did tell you he went on to become mayor. The fucked up part is that 90 minutes later, a 31-year-old woman named Marietta Digliramo, she was chilling on the stoop, minding her own business, when a black man walked up to her, said, "Hey, how you doing?" and then put 3 in her chest at close range. Her grandmother's prayers went unanswered that day because Marietta died. And they weren't letting up for the holidays. Oh, no, no, no. If anything, they were on straight go. Because on December 20th, Ilario Bertatucci, an 81-year-old senior citizen, was just trying to cross the goddamn street. Somebody shot his ass 3 times. He made it to the other side. Then 2 hours later, 20-year-old Teresa DeMartini, she was a little tipsy. You see, she had just come home from a Christmas party, and she was full of Christmas chill, trying to park her car. You know, she had to turn that music down so she could concentrate on whipping that thing. Y'all know it's a scientific fact that you can park better when the music is down? I'm sorry, that's not the point. She was concentrating so hard that she missed the dude with the gun that fired several shots into her car. That alcohol might have helped keep our girl alive too, because old Teresa lived to tell the story. 2 days later, December 22nd, 1973, 19-year-old Neil Moynihan, he was on his way to take a teddy bear to his little sister. They shot him 3 motherfucking times walking down the street. Dead in the middle of the street, middle of the day. Literally a few minutes later and just a few blocks away, 65-year-old Mildred Hostler was walking to the bus stop. They shot her 4 motherfucking times at point blank range too. Now you know they didn't have to do that to Mildred. And just in time for Christmas, like literally on Christmas Eve, they did some old Nightmare Before Christmas type of killing. Like they was really trying to do something special. These motherfuckers grabbed up a homeless man and took him back to one of their houses. They tied him up, they gagged him, and they took turns hacking his body into pieces. What kind of sick Christmas is y'all having? Then they stuffed the body parts into a cardboard box and tossed it in the water. The box washed up on Ocean Beach. I'm going to pause for just a second because that's got to be the laziest name for a beach that I have ever heard of. I mean, were they like, there's the ocean, there's the beach. Let's call it Ocean Beach. Like, where's your imagination? Anyway, back to the story. This grisly present with the body of a man who would simply be known as John Doe number 169. His limbs had been cut perfectly like a motherfucker was cutting up chicken. His hands and feet and head, though, was missing. They said y'all won't identify this motherfucker. So the Death Angels went on winter break, and then they let the white people catch their breath a little bit and bring in the new year. And just when they thought the killings might be over, they started cranking that thing right back up. On January 28, 1974, they kicked things off with a bang, literally. Them motherfuckers killed 5 people in one day. One day, I tell you. Starting off with Tanner Smith. She was 32 years old, heading to the fabric store. She wanted to make herself a shirt. She got shot standing on the sidewalk up the street from her house. 10 minutes later, 8 blocks away, 69-year-old Vincent was popped twice in the back. Poor Vincent. He was out dumpster diving. Because you see, that's what he did to supplement his little Social Security check. And even more tragic, he too was close to his house when he was killed. And he also had a house full of people waiting on him to get back because it was his 69th birthday. He died on his birthday. Ugh. An hour later, another senior citizen, 87-year-old John Bambitt, caught 2 bullets with his body, killing him instantly. And then there was 45-year-old Jane Holly. Jane was at the washing mat just trying to do her laundry. The gunman ran in the laundromat and opened fire and then ran back out. She was dead before the dryer stopped. And it was her 25th wedding anniversary. Like, ugh. It was her 25th wedding anniversary. She was just trying to get something cute to wear for that night. A few minutes later, 23-year-old Roxanne McMillan, she was taking clothes out of her house, going back and forth to the car, and a black man walked up to her, said hello, and then as she was returning the greeting, he shot her twice. Now, she survived, but she was paralyzed from the waist down. Now, after they cranked that shit back up, San Francisco was on some, we done had enough of this shit. I mean, these killers had the city in a motherfucking panic. White folks was scared to go outside, and white folks weren't the only ones. You see, black folks were scared too. Why? Because they didn't want to feel the rash from that retribution and that revenge attack from one of them good old boys, both white or blue. You know what I'm saying? Them white boys and them blue boys. The revenge shit can be real. So everybody was scared. And then the businesses, they took a hit too. The people were staying home. They weren't patronizing the local businesses. The streets was empty. The beach was empty. The clubs, the restaurants, all empty. Now these attacks were affecting the economy, and them white folks was not about to have that. So they started a task force. Operation Zebra was on and popping. Now, speaking of races, the name given to this operation, Operation Zebra, the police swear up, down, and sideways that it wasn't racially motivated. Oh no. They said the reason they called it Zebra was because they used the Z channel on the police radio exclusively for communications about these crimes, and in their alphabet, Z stands for zebra. Okay. So you want us to believe that it wasn't because blacks was killing whites? I watched All in the Family and the Jeffersons back in the day, and I remember George Jefferson was always calling anything that had to do with black on white, he called that shit zebra. It was during the 70s and 80s, so that word was definitely a part of the zeitgeist. But okay, you want us to believe it was because of a radio channel. All right, if that's your story and you sticking with it, I guess we can roll with it. Again, the only evidence that the police had was that it was black men described as assailing these people, and those were only from the witnesses who happened to live. They mostly did walk-bys, walk up on a motherfucker, pull that peacemaker out, and make them lay it down, and then dash off to the next one. And again, the murder weapon was always a 32 caliber revolver. Now, because the cops didn't have enough soul on the payroll, and I'm talking soul with your fist in the air, your afro pick, they didn't have enough soul on the payroll. It forced them to have to resort to some very racist ways of investigating, since all they really had was a whole bunch of white cops. On April 17th, 1974, them motherfuckers started a policy to stop and search every black man encountered that fit the description of a black man with an afro between the ages of 20 and 30 that they met on the streets at night. Like, this is the 70s. Did you know how many black men had afros? Stop it. But oh, it gets better. Since it was possible that they would be stopping some brothers over and over again, they had motherfucking zebra cards that they handed out to the men for them to show as proof that their identification had already been cleared. They was on some real nigga where your papers at kind of time. Did Mouser give you permission to leave the plantation? Oh, child. I cannot. Like, what the fuck did they think that was gonna do? You just gonna stop random people and they just gonna be walking around with a bloody machete? Clearly, all black people look alike if you gotta stop all of them that you see. Oh, my Lord, my blood pressure doing this goddamn case. I ain't saying it's right, but they were pouring gas on an already lit situation. Of course, the bullshit didn't go over well with the melanated people and their supporters. The peoples was up in arms and they rioted, they cussed, and they fussed. Then they sued. They took the mayor and the San Francisco Police Department to court. Now, court moved a whole lot faster in the 70s because 7 days after the start of this policy, there was a hearing, and it came out that just in that 7 day period, 567 black men had been stopped, and not one goddamn lead came from them treating them citizens like that. So then, of course, the police refined the program. They told their officers to be more selective when they was making stops. Make them more when the individual is acting or appearing to be out of the ordinary. Say what? Say who? Remember, the SFPD at this point is 98% white. And to some of them, just breathing was out of the ordinary for black folks. What the fuck difference did they think they were making? Well, the next day, on April 25th, 1974, the courts found that the searches were unconstitutional. No shit, Sherlock. Now, just because it was unconstitutional does not mean that San Francisco Police Department stopped them searches. No, they didn't stop. They just reduced the numbers. It was at first going from like 75 to 100 a day. They reduced that down to like 12 or so a day. Whatever. Ugh. The way my blood pressure has been up while researching this story, Jesus. Ooh. To add more racism on this story, San Francisco PD had about 70 black officers out of 2,000. And they were, of course, given the burden to get to the places that the white cops couldn't go. Two officers in particular, Officer Earl Sanders and Rotia Guilford, they headed up the investigation. But on the official reports from the time, they regulated them black officers all the way to the side and gave all the credit to the white police officers who didn't do shit. And at the same time, when all of this was going on, Officer Earl and Officer Rotia, they had a civil rights situation going on against the SFPD for racial discrimination policies. Imagine having to do your job while you sue your employer, and they don't give a fuck about you or your lawsuit. Man, I tell you, black people are so goddamn resilient. Man, I love us. With all that heat on the streets, the Death Angels went on a hiatus for a while. Maybe they was trying to let things die down a little bit, but there was this pause. I said a pause, not a stop. And when April's policy of searching black men started, I think it pissed the Death Angels off because they crunked that thing right back up. Tom Rainwater and Linda Story, they worked at the Salvation Army. They was just leaving work to go get them something to eat on April 1st, 1974. Only one of them made it back. 2 weeks later, April 14th, 1974, two strangers that just so happened to be in the same place at the same time. 15-year-old Terry Wright, he was waiting on the bus. And 18-year-old Ward Anderson, he was trying to hitchhike. He ain't had no money for the bus. They both got caught up in a walk-by. Fortunately, they both survived. Then on April 16th, 1974, 23-year-old Nelson Shields IV was trying to put a rug in his friend's station wagon. You know what it's like to put a rug in a car. A whole bunch of lifting and pushing and sweating. You definitely not really paying attention to the surroundings. And old Nelson didn't see that man coming up behind him with that 32 and shoot him in the back 3 times. Baby, let me tell you something. The people are up in arms. Honey, they are applying that pressure on the police to make some shit happen like they do on TV. Them motherfuckers was like, call up Perry Mason. Call up Virgil Tibbs, because we in the heat of the night in this motherfucker. San Francisco PD was trying, but the randomness of the attacks always had them on the defense. Then they figured out the cheat code. They said, you know what? Let's put some money out there to sweeten this pot, because y'all know money talk. Money also make a motherfucker talk. Always has, always will. So to get some information flowing, they figured that they offered a reward that maybe, just maybe, they could tempt the black community into dropping a dime by offering a $30,000 reward for any information that would lead to an arrest and a conviction of the murderers. 30 bands ain't no small change, and in the 70s, that was a big bag. That was enough money to make a motherfucker tell on his mama. And just as sure as fat meat is greasy, a man called the tip line to say he had information on the zebra killers. You see, when you're doing dirt with a clique, there's always a chance that one of them gonna tell. And in this crew, a man named Anthony Harris, 28 years old, they called him Judo because he was deadly with his hands. He was an accomplice turned informant. You see, Anthony worked at a Muslim moving company with JC, Larry, and Manuel. He was the man that called the tip line and Takashi 6ix9ine on his boys. He was a part of the crew. He was there, a participant in the killations. He was a killer too. Y'all don't hear me. He had been there with them when they did the killing and the attacking. Yes, his Judas ass turned state on their ass, and he would be the star fucking witness at trial. And you know what? They gave his ass immunity. And he got the motherfucking reward money as the icing on the cake. You see, May 1st, 1974, after they had done talked to their informant, the police was like, posse up! And 100 police officers rounded up the suspects at their homes in a surprise early morning raid. Them boys was laced up and booted and shooted and ready to go at 4 a.m. in the morning. They caught them niggas actually sleeping. Now, they grabbed up 8 initially. 31-year-old Thomas Manny, 37-year-old Clarence Jamerson, 28-year-old Dwight Stallings, 22-year-old Edgar Burton, 22-year-old Larry Green, 29-year-old J.C. Simon, and 29-year-old Manuel Moore. They had another man that was implicated too, a man named Jesse Lee Cooks. He was named by Anthony as well, but they didn't have to snatch his ass up because he was already in prison. He had confessed to a murder of another random white woman in another killing situation. All of these brothers that they snatched up were members of the Muslim Temple number 26 in San Francisco. Now, they let 4 of them go. Thomas, Clarence, Dwight, and Edgar. They let them go a few days later because, try as they might, they couldn't link them to no crimes. Baby, them boys must have had an ironclad alibi. I mean, them niggas must have been with Jesus, because them white cops could have cared less if they mama and them said that they was at the house. Only Jesus could get them out of that. Even Allah couldn't. They could have said they was with Allah, and them white cops would have been like, who is that? But Jesus, that's the only thing that would have got them out this shit. But whatever the alibi was, they cut them boys loose. That leaves Larry, JC, and Manuel, and of course old Jesse, who is already locked up, on the hook for the murders. And after they were off the streets, you telling me the killings of white people stopped? That no more white people were ever killed ever again? Are you for real? Okay. And how about this? They weren't charged with all the murders that I just told you about, all of these murders that San Francisco Police Department has said that they were supposed to have committed. Instead, in some real trickery, fuckery kind of courtroom shenanigans, they just included evidence from all 14 murders. Like, how the fuck did they get away with that? I thought you couldn't use evidence that wasn't directly linked to the crime a person is being charged with. Like if I robbed Bank of America one time and then you saying the prosecution get to bring in evidence from 10 other bank robberies that ain't got shit to do with my one charge of armed robbery, I smell something funny going on. Do y'all smell it? See, the thing was, all of the members weren't present at any of these random assaults, murders, all of these things that are going on. They weren't all together at the same time. So this is how the charges broke down. Manuel Moore and J.C. Simon, they was, let's call them a team, because apparently they did they dirt together. They were charged with 2 counts of murder for Jane, that was the lady at the laundromat, and Tanner, the lady that was on her way to the fabric store. They called 2 counts of assault for Roxanne, the lady that was taking the stuff out of her car, and 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon for Terry and Ward, the 2 dudes that was on the bus stop. Then Larry Green and Jesse Lee Cooks, they're going to be the other team. And they were charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of assault, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 2 counts of robbery for white girl named Quita and her husband, Richard Haig. Now, what tied them all together, even though they didn't act all together, was the conspiracy charge. Y'all niggas got together and plotted and planned this out, and that's how all of them ended up in the courtroom together. But still, the charges only cover 7 people. The police, the media, the mayor, everybody. They were saying that they was responsible for 24 murders, right? What about the other 17? I don't understand how if you aren't officially charging the accused with their crimes, how the fuck can you bring them up in court? That's all I'm saying. I'm not a lawyer. And New Orleans Nation, if you are, please school your sister. But how can you bring up crimes not charged or previously convicted of in court? That sounds like it poisons the jury. Like, how the fuck were they able to do that? I'll tell you how the fuck they was able to do that. The judge allowed it. The judge allowed the prosecution to introduce evidence about other attacks that the police attributed to the zebra attacks to support their conspiracy charge. You ain't got nothing but speculation and gut feelings about to help hang these men. Okay, carry on. But all I got to say is, So our killer boy band goes on trial a year later on March 3rd, 1975, for what, like I said, was a smorgasbord of charges. In more prolific news, the trial was one of the longest in California history. It lasted 1 year and 6 days. There were 167 witness testimonies, 108 for the prosecution and 59 for the defense. And the jury was made up of 8 women and 4 men. The breakdown, there was 7 whites, 2 blacks, 2 Chinese, and 1 Filipino. Man, that trial lasted so long that one of the jurors was a newlywed when the trial started. That heifer got pregnant and went into labor during the trial. They stopped, let her go pop her baby out. She sat, took her 6 baths for about a week, and she was back in the jury box. Baby, talk about bounce back. And then there was Anthony Harris, the snitch. The nigga that sold out his crew for the $30,000 reward that offered information for the Zebra crew. The nigga that was an ex-con and an ex-mental patient. The motherfucker was on the stand for 12 days. This nigga sang like he was in concert and the motherfucking rent was due. The audacity, 'cause nigga, you was with us. He participated in every crime from the first one with white girl named Quita until the day they did them 5 in one day. Like, he actively participated, and then you turn out to be the star witness? You mean to tell me you did this shit too and you get a bag for ratting on your compadres? Now, I don't condone violence or the thought that snitches get stitches for those who are not a part of the crime. If you are an innocent bystander and somebody hurt you or somebody you love, then you need to tell on their asses. That ain't snitching, that's justice. But if you were a part of the caper, how dare you speak on what was done? That's just code. But that's also why you do your dirt by yourself. You see, my granddaddy used to say that if 3 people know about it, that's 2 too many. Come on now. But back to Anthony. This nigga on stage singing all their greatest hits, including his profound knowledge of the killations and aggravated assaults, like he was rattling off accomplishments from a goddamn resume at a goddamn job interview. He told the jury that JC, Larry, Jesse, and Manuel were members of an elite squad known as the Death Angels, and these are their stories. Come on, Law and Order. He said that the more a member killed and the more savage it was, the more status they got within the group. He told them how Larry Green had hacked white girl named Quita to death, and then how Jesse Lee Cooks had tried to duplicate the same shit on her husband, but he ain't had that swing down like Larry did. He said that they were watching the Ali Frazier fight and that they were so crunk when it was over that they just decided to go out and go terrorize some unsuspecting white folks. He told them that JC had killed Tanner Smith and that Manuel had killed Jane Holly while she was taking clothes out the dryer at the laundromat. He said JC killed Roxanne while she was walking back and forth taking stuff in her apartment. Now he is explicitly telling what everybody else in the crew was doing, how they were doing it, where they were doing it, but he never said he did anything. He was just there, a spectator, kind of like the designated driver. I was there, but I wasn't really there. You see, my body was there, but my spirit was somewhere else. Nigga, please. Even with immunity, he's still lying and snitching. They caught his ass in all kind of lies on the stand. Like, the nigga sent a letter while he was in jail before he started snitching on December 1st, 1974. He sent a letter to some defense lawyers, all, the media, everybody. He said that the San Francisco Police Department, the mayor, and the DA had devised a master plan conspiracy to have him killed because he refused to submit to being brainwashed to give them a conspiracy charge. He went on to say that he was forced against his will to forge false lies against the so-called zebra killers in a grand jury indictment. He said, quote, "So many parts of the grand jury testimonies are untrue, false, that I find it staggering to my own imagination," end quote. He goes on to further say that the cops had threatened to prosecute him for murder unless he helped them with the plot of some type of conspiracy. Now, mind you, he didn't write this letter, like not handwrite it out. Somehow he was bought from the jail and they took him to his wife, and his wife typed that motherfucker up on a typewriter. Listen. Now, if he had handwritten it, that's one thing. But a motherfucker don't go through that much trouble. Do you know how heavy typewriters are? She had to leave her house with a typewriter, travel to wherever he was being held in jail, sit down, and then start typing. You don't go through that much trouble to rectify a lie if it ain't the truth trying to get out. I'm just saying. Now, on the stand, he was cool as a cucumber, though. Maybe let me tell you something. Butter would not melt in his mouth. That nigga was so cool. He had an answer for all the questions. He said it was the pressure. The pressure made him do crazy shit, and he didn't mean it. And I swear I'm telling the truth now. Then they asked him why his palm print was found at the murder scene for Salim, the non-white man that was killed. What I said probably had the good fish. Why was your palm print at Salim's murder scene? See, Anthony had testified that he had stayed in the car when the shit went down. So now that he on the stand and they pressing him about it, he was like, "Oh, you see, what had happened was, I was in the car. And then I went in and I saw JC standing over the body and then I ran out. So I must have touched something." Right, nigga. Like I said, you were at every damn crime. Who the fuck takes a spectator along to commit a caper? Don't nobody need no audience to commit a crime. An accomplice, maybe, but definitely not a witness for that sake of having somebody there. I mean, never in the history of criminalistic activities has there been someone that said, "Hey man, come on, go with me and watch me kill this motherfucker. Or come on, go with me and watch me rob this bank." Please. Now, the defense, they was like, their whole defense was, "I wasn't there, that wasn't me, and I don't really know that nigga like that." And y'all know this nigga is actually crazy. Y'all know he was in the mental hospital, right? They put witnesses on the stand, many of them from the Nation of Islam, that gave sworn testimony that on the various dates that these men were somewhere else other than at the scenes of a crime. To counter the conspiracy charge, they had neighbors testifying that they had never seen Anthony Harris in the neighborhood, much less at one of their houses or at one of the gatherings. Nope, they weren't together in the mosque. Nope, they were never seen hanging out. Never saw them in a group playing and shit. And on the night when them 5 people got killed, there were witnesses that said that the men were at the Winterland Casino that night watching the Ali Frazier fight. They said that it was actually Anthony, the star witness. He was the one that was always talking about killing Whitey. That's the nigga that don't like white people. They said we don't fuck with him like that because of how he is. And that's the nigga y'all listening to? They got Anthony's girlfriend on the stand to testify about the night white girl named Quita was killed. She said that Anthony came to her house to clean up. She testified that Anthony was covered in blood and that he had also given her a ring. Turns out that was white girl named Quita's ring. And she said when she asked Anthony, why the fuck you covered in blood and where the fuck you been? He told her that he had been out killing devils. But you ain't do nothing, right? Mm-hmm. His girlfriend also said that he came to her house alone. Nobody was with him. They got married 3 days later using white girl named Quita's ring. Now if that ain't a blood diamond. I just don't understand how they put so much stock in Anthony's testimony. To me, I think he was the one that was with all the fuck shit. I mean, he has so much detail to pin all of this shit on a group of men. He had to be an integral part, if not the ringleader. Because you see, JC and Manuel, they weren't charged with the same crimes as Jesse and Larry. That has to mean that they weren't in the same place at the same time. But in order for Anthony to be able to spill this tea, his ass had to be. That means he was at every crime. He is the common denominator. Because don't forget, there was 4 other men that they snatched up at the beginning based off of what the snitch said. Sounds like the ringleader to me. It also sounds like he pulled a Nino Brown. You know, he was the head of the organization, and when he got on the stand, he put it on the pretty boy. Ain't no way this man knows all this first-hand information, and he gets to walk scot motherfucking free? They should have at least given him 30, 40 years. Something. Corporal punishment. Go cane his ass. Get that nigga a whipping like they do in Singapore. Y'all heard me describe these crimes. Them white folks was catching hell left, right, and sideways, and they allowed this man who had all of the knowledge about how it all went down, they allowed him to walk away whole? Now remember I told you that they was all tried together, meaning everybody was in the courtroom and everybody's time on the stand, of course, reflects on everybody else. So when Larry Green got on the stand, he was good, they say. He was a former basketball star and he was poised and calm on the stand. He was dressed nicely. His afro was just right. He didn't look like a killer. Okay, maybe we got something here. Manuel Moore did all right. He was easygoing, but he was kind of slow. You know, you could tell he was the follower type. He seemed like wherever the wind blew, he would go that way. But he also couldn't keep his story straight on the stand, so when they asked him something and he gave a contradictory statement, they was on some, you know you done fucked up, right? Not looking good. So then J.C. Simon, he was on some I don't give a fuck type of time on the stand. The nigga was argumentative with the prosecutors. Then he started acting like he couldn't hear. What you say? Huh? Say what? Huh? Nigga, you can hear me. And then he just started saying shit off the top of his head. Like, they asked him where he was on a particular night, and this man said, Allah handed me a stack of papers and told me to go down to the mosque and give a meeting. Sir, what? And then JC was like, you know what? I'm done with all of this. So then he just started refusing to answer questions by pleading the First, Fifth, Sixth, and 14th Amendment. Like, nigga, just get off the stand. You are not helping us because the First Amendment is freedom of speech. Fifth Amendment is the right to not self-incriminate you. Sixth Amendment is the right to a speedy trial. 14th Amendment is the right to due process. Like, nigga, you up here playing Uno with these amendments, just throwing out amendments. This nigga done dropped a skip, a reverse, a draw two, and a change of color. You gonna fuck around and have that jury hit you with a draw life card. Uno, nigga. Like, nigga, just get off the stand. You are not helping us. The First Amendment is for freedom of speech. The Fifth Amendment is the right to not self-incriminate. The Sixth Amendment is the right to a speedy trial. And the 14th Amendment is the right to due process. Like, nigga, you out here playing Uno with throwing out these damn amendments. This nigga done dropped a skip, a reverse, a draw two, and changed the color. What you gonna do is fuck around and have the jury hit you with a draw life card and bust you with a Uno, nigga. Just say you don't want to testify and shut the fuck up. Larry probably sitting there looking like, I ain't gonna never leave prison. All that to say, you know what? You better watch who you do dirt with. One day they might be on trial with you. Will they make a good witness? I'm just saying. You know, I remember I'm here to educate too. They brought in Jesse Cooks from prison to see if he wanted to testify. Remember, he was already serving time. But old Jesse Lee didn't take the stand. After he seen the rest of them niggas get up there, Jesse was like, you know what? The jury already fucked up. Ain't no need for the convict to testify. So he just sat quietly and patiently and didn't say nothing. The jury took 3.5 days to deliberate before finding all 4 guilty on all counts. And California didn't have the death penalty, so they would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. They were sentenced on March 29th, 1976 to life with the possibility of parole. Now, California law said that when you get a life sentence, no matter how many charges that you have, they all run concurrently. So it's not a situation where you will die and then get resurrected and then still got some more time to do. Nope. Full sentences is just one big old life sentence. So what happened to the boys? Well, J.C. Simon passed away at the San Quentin State Prison in 2015. He was 69 years old. Manuel Moore died November 15th, 2017 in a California prison hospital. He was 73 years old. And Jesse Lee Cooks died June 30th, 2021. He was 76 years old. And Larry Green is the last Mohican still alive and still incarcerated at California State Prison Solano in Vacaville, California. Truly the last Mohican. All his boys have gone to the upper room. And he has gone up for parole 8 times and 8 times been denied. But y'all know what? His next parole hearing is this month, July 31st, at the ripe old age of 72. Larry Green gonna try to get out one more time, cause this is probably it. We probably at the end of the road, goddamn boys. The man is singing softly in the background. This man has been in prison for 50 years. What you think? You think they're gonna let old Larry out? Mm-hmm. But all I can see in my head is Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence in the movie of Life. Larry gonna steal a body from the morgue and set that bitch on fire, and he gonna be at a goddamn Braves game next to you. Wow, 50 years, and he is still going up for parole. At this point, just leave me alone. I done already got my seat picked out. I'm good. Now, the last person to talk about is Anthony Harris, because he got witness protection, which gave him a new identity, and who knows what the fuck happened to his singing ass. The last record of him shows that he was in protective custody after he left the stand. Him, his wife, and his 2 kids disappeared on May 1st, 1975, and have not been seen since. But one curious factoid that I read was that when the judge was sentencing the 4 men, only one of them chose to speak to the court, and that was Larry Green. Larry said that one of the inspectors on the case had said something slick in a newspaper article and he wanted to address it. He said that the man said Anthony Harris was scared to return to San Francisco to collect the reward money because he felt like his life would be in danger, insinuating that if any remaining death angels was still out there, that they would light his ass up the minute he hit the street. Well, Larry said, speaking for me and my co-defendants, we don't have nothing to gain from the death of Anthony Harris, but the San Francisco Police Department does. Say that shit, Larry. So here's what I want to know. You saying that Ant did all that talking and he didn't get no reward money? I don't believe that shit. That nigga was on the stand for 12 days. At some point during them 12 days, he asked about his check. That's only black. We don't do shit without asking about our money. The reward was for the arrest and conviction. The arrest had already happened. The conviction was imminent. Ain't no way in Al Green's world that black man dropped a dime on his boys, blew up his whole spot, had to go in witness protection, and didn't get that check. Fuck out of here with that one, shawty. I ain't going for that one. Even if he had to have them put that check in his mama name, he would have did that shit. 30 bands in 1974 was a shit ton of money. If that nigga had to dress in drag, he was gonna pick that check up. Especially since he's on record complaining about how his witness protection was set up. You see, Aunt say they gave him the Timu special. Timu wasn't even around then, and they was fucking him up. He got a social security card and a driver's license and the deuces. They were supposed to give him a birth certificate, some military discharge papers, and a high school diploma so he could actually work, get a decent job. So you know he went and got that reward money. But even if he didn't, serves your muck ass right. 'Cause, sir, you got away with murder. But they did drop a dime on his ass, I feel, because I found an article that said that when the trial was over, they gave all the details about his goddamn witness protection situation. Yeah, they said that they put him and his family on a plane to Houston and gave him a job as an assistant manager at a fried chicken restaurant that paid him $150 a week. Y'all telling all this man's witness protection business. They say that his job lasted all of 2 months before Anthony wrecked the car, and then he said he couldn't get to his job because he lived in the suburbs. Y'all dropping clues on top of clues on top of clues. Y'all want the Death Angels to find Anthony ass. Like, how many chicken joints were there around in Houston in 75? It wasn't so many that Anthony couldn't be found if somebody wanted to reach out and touch that ass. But since he got a new identity, we will never know. So what you think, New Orleans Nation? Did these guys conspire to kill white people? Was racism so bad that the only option was to open up a can of vengeance is mine on any white person that they saw? Did that justify their crimes? Was this just another rush to convict black men? And speaking of that conviction, what about Anthony? Was this a mastermind that got off on killing white people, roped some of his homies into doing that shit, and then when the block got hot, he left them holding the bag? Or was Anthony really just along for the ride? Like, was his presence a good luck charm for the killers? Was he a lookout? I don't know. But it seems like a trial full of reasonable doubt to me. And if the victims had been the usual lot, black people, drug addicts, women, would the trial have lasted that long? Shit, would there have even been a trial? What y'all think happened to Anthony? Well, that New Nation is the story of the Death Angels, aka the Zebra Killers. Larry, JC, Manuel, and Jesse. 4 prolific killing niggas that took race matters into their own hands and set some shit off in a very real way. I leave you with this. What if Anthony didn't tell? The police had no clue who was committing these crimes. If Anthony hadn't dropped a dime, ain't no telling how long white folks would have been shot down in the streets of San Francisco. A lovely city now, but back in the 70s was a powder keg of racial tensions. I hope that you have enjoyed and were enlightened on some bad motherfuckers from the Bay Area. And, since you've made it this far, you might as well go ahead and hit like and subscribe. You know you feeling me. Let's go and make this thing official. Then if you would be so kind as to hit those stars right there too. Yeah, right there next to the button. Yeah, hit them stars. Give me the 5. 5 stars for your favorite country girl. As always, you can find me on social media, Facebook and Instagram. I am Melanin Mayhem Podcast, and on Twitter, or what they call X, I'm Melanin Mayhem PC. I'm trying to get better at posting follow-ups and links to the stories. Y'all pray for me because your girl is juggling a lot of balls, but I'ma do it. And if you know of a melanated baddie that you think needs some airtime, hit me up at melaninmayhempodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, New Orleans Nation, y'all know I want y'all to stay safe. I need y'all to ever stay vigilant. And remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. It's your girl, Renee. It's one love, and I'm out. Wow.